debt is bad, regardless of what it is. Debt is bad. My dad's got a saying as well, if you spend £1 less than what you earn, you'll always have money. If you spend £1 more than what you earn, you'll always be in debt. And that's my dad's entire philosophy around debt.
Joe Woodhouse. Growing up, he was taught about the dangers of debt and to save every penny he made. But a remarkable career in finance at a young age led him to learn everything there is to know about personal finance and wealth building. The arrival of his children gave him clarity on the importance of family wealth, which he now shares with entrepreneurs around the world.
So I try and build my entire life, to be fair, just around things that I enjoy doing and that I'm good at. So my dad's like very anti-investment, anything, anti-risk. Just you hold all your money in cash, you pay your mortgage off, you keep your expenses down, that's you life sorted.
Which I wanted to put to you was the idea of like delayed gratification. So we try and do the idea of, if you want to buy something now, wait at least 7 days. One of our mentors is a guy called Dan Priestley, and he said something along the lines of, buying a Ferrari is only fun when you can't quite afford it. Like if you can fully afford something, it's just a car. It's boring. If it's just out of reach, that's when it becomes more of like a thing to work towards, and we're all looking for growth.
I needed to get a client. I knew what my average client size was.
Turn it into a business.
Yeah, and I started earning this money very quickly at 22, 23 year old.
I've got a quick favour to ask you. Nearly 90% of people listening to this podcast right now don't follow or subscribe to us. And my goal is to get that down to 80%. So if you've ever liked an episode or a clip that we've put out, please could you click that follow or subscribe button. It helps us more than you know to bring more guests onto the podcast and put out better and better content for you. Thank you. Before we dive into this episode, I want to take a second to speak about our sponsor, Pith Stem, who we are thrilled to have on this journey with us. As someone who is always looking for ways to improve my healthy hustle, Pith Stem's DropTop desk stood out to me as the best full work from home solution on the market. The world of work from home is changing, and a laptop or screen perched on your lap or dining room table isn't enough anymore. It's imperative that we have a solution at home that matches our productivity station that we can have in our office. But of course, homes weren't made to be worked in, and not all of us want a dedicated study. That's why I'm so happy that Pith Stem created this perfect solution. They designed this desk with both the needs of the professional and their home in mind. It's perfect because it allows me to have a full productivity station that suits my needs and helps me get the most out of every minute that I spend at it, not only so I work comfortably, but that I actually enjoy it. And the best thing about DropTop, I can close and lock it at the end of the day to keep work and home separate. And it looks awesome on the wall. You can get your DropTop desk anywhere in the world from pithandstem.com, or just Google DropTop and you'll find it pretty quickly. So it's an absolute pleasure to have you here, because something that we've never spoken about really on this podcast with all the amazing people we've had on was how to look after your money once you've got it. We spend a lot of time with entrepreneurs talking about how to make your money, tricks, different tips, whatever they've done, their different strategies. But it's really interesting to talk about what to actually do when you get it. And what I think is really interesting is that, I told you just before we started recording, that some of the best advice I think we got in our business when we started it was to do a wealth course before doing a business course. So to understand what to do with money before you get any. And so my question to you is, how important is it in this day and age to understand money before you get any?
Oh, it's massive. And this is a mistake that I see so many people make out here, especially in Dubai, where the Dubai glitz and glam, it's like keeping up with the Joneses. Like there's always someone we better watch, there's always someone with a newer car, there's always someone spending more money at the beach club on a Saturday afternoon. And one of the biggest tips I give anyone is save and then spend. So pay yourself first. So the day after, so again, if you're a business owner like we are, so basically you've got your business, pay yourself a set salary into bank account number one. So your salary comes in today, then from there you have a set amount, go to your savings, go to your investments, and go to your bills account, and then you just spend what's left. The other way around that, which is what most people do, is they spend and then save if anything's left at the end of the month. And it just doesn't work. It's like, back to business owners, do you do a profit and loss within your business? Right. All a budget is just a household profit and loss. Like, that is it. It's simple as that. But people get really flustered when you say the word budget.
Yes. They feel constrained, don't they? Like, we know people that are able to tell us how much they're going to spend on a holiday next December, like December 2025, because they've already budgeted out their business and what they're going to pay themselves next year. So they can start looking at stuff. Yeah. So actually, I guess, by being, they say the disciplined are free, right? So if you discipline yourself and look after your money now, you actually have more freedom in a year or two's time. This is why this conversation is going to be sick, because there's so much stuff in here that I'm like, this is what we do. And I think everyone else is going to love the stuff that we're able to bring to them. So one of the things that we were told to do, and I'd love to get your opinions on this, is one of them is just get a buffer. So whatever your current living expenses are now, work out how much it would cost to live that for a number of months, then work that buffer up. So you should have at least a 6-month buffer.
Yep.
And then keep increasing that. And effectively, if you get a 10-year buffer, you're financially free. Is that something you'd still...
Yeah, so I always tell people have I call it an emergency pot. So I have a 6 months emergency pot. So exactly the same. Whatever your monthly expenses are, and I'm not just talking your bills, I'm talking everything, living costs, food, petrol, kids, after school activities, the lot, work out how much that is a month and then multiply that by 6. And that is how much you'll need sat in a separate bank account before you even think about investing. And again, some people, oh, but Joe, that's a lot of money. I'm like, it's even more money if you don't have that and something does come up, because you're then either having to cash in investments or you're bouncing off credit cards, which either way is going to take you 10 steps back. And then if the boiler breaks down, if car breaks down, family emergencies, you've got that money there readily available. So you're not having then to dip into other pots.
What do you think it does to someone psychologically to have some sort of buffer as well? So you know you've got a runway of however many months before something bad happens. Like, how does that impact us?
It's massive. And you know yourself, like when your back's against the wall with something, that's when things go wrong. Like you drop a slice of toast on the floor, it's good to land butter side down.
Yeah.
If you've not got that money there set aside, logic says, and chances are that something will go wrong. Then what happens?
Well, exactly. And I always think, like, if you've got a buffer there, and whether it's 3 months, 6 months, or like 2 or 3 years, at the same exact living standards you've got now, if stuff does go wrong, you can always reduce that slightly, right? So you can make yourself feel a bit more scarce, but you've still got that idea. And realistically, I think pretty much all business owners that I know, at least, would back themselves that if something goes wrong in 6 months, you can probably start something new or regen what's already happening. The other part to that, which I wanted to put to you, was the idea of like delayed gratification. So we try and do the idea of, if you want to buy something now, wait at least 7 days, because otherwise it's so easy just to go bang, got it. And then what are you working towards? Like, if you can just buy stuff. One of our mentors is a guy called Dan Priestley, and he said something along the lines of, buying a Ferrari is only fun when you can't quite afford it. Like, if you can fully afford something, it's just a car. It's boring. If it's just out of reach, that's when it becomes more of like a thing to work towards. And we're all looking for growth, right? So I'm interested in your opinion on delaying that gratification, like not just buying stuff when you see it.
One thing I always say to people is work out how much that actually costs you in time as well. So again, I'm not talking if you charge X amount an hour and you work this many hours a week. I'm talking, right, if you're saving, my maths aren't this good, but if you're saving £5,000 a month and you're working 50 hours a week, work out what that means per hour. And then work out how long it's going to take you in time, how many days, weeks, months of your life it's going to be for you to buy that Ferrari. Because ultimately, if this Ferrari is going to cost you 3 years of your life, you're having to work for an extra 3 years just to drive that Ferrari, which you'll probably enjoy for a week. Then the novelty will wear off.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually a similar way that Dan Martell would say to work out if you should be doing the work in the first place, right? Yeah. Like if your hourly wage is 100 quid an hour, should you be doing anything that costs anywhere near that? No.
This is something that a mentor taught me as well. Okay. So called a skills fund matrix. So you've got your £10 an hour job, your £100 an hour job, your £1,000 an hour jobs, and then so 9 quadrants. Then at the bottom you've got lowest fun, highest fun. So I try and structure my entire business around living in this top box here, stuff that are £1,000 an hour jobs, and stuff that I highly enjoy doing. If something's a £10 or £100 an hour job, I just outsource that. Like with videography, like editing videos, that sort of stuff. 1, I don't enjoy it. 2, I'm shite at it anyway. So again, that's why I work with people like Ed, who makes me and sound a hell of a lot better on camera than I actually am. And again, it's just something else that I can outsource. So I try and build my entire life, to be fair, just around things that I enjoy doing and that I'm good at.
And then it gives you more, not only are you going to make more money by doing that, but also you've got that freedom, which is ultimately what you're looking for, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Joe, I want to take you back, if I may.
Okay.
All the way back. I'm interested in your parents' relationship with money, because I think people that go into business and are interested in the money side probably more so with the financial sector, a lot of it comes back to their relationship with their parents and the parents' relationship with money. And I'm interested what that was like, or what you remember of that growing up.
So that's why I got two stories for you. So one is how I got into it, which is probably not what you expect, how I got into financial services. And second is like my parents' relationship with money. So my dad was from the roughest council estate in Sheffield, never grew up with anything. Very typical Yorkshire family. Like my dad was 21 by the first time he ever went to a restaurant, which was with my mum. And they grew up with nothing. And my dad's sort of lifelong goal and ambition was 1, getting off the council estate, 2, buying his own home, and then 3, paying that mortgage off. Like, that was life complete for my dad. And my dad bounced around a few different jobs when he was younger. Then when he was 20, started buying and selling second-hand bric-a-brac. And then since then, my dad sort of created a business. So my dad's a market trader. So he then built that over the years. So my dad's always been a market trader ever since I was born, just selling second-hand bric-a-brac on sort of local markets around South Yorkshire. And he'd done all right for himself, managed to buy a house, managed to pay that mortgage off. But my dad's very anti-risk when it comes to money. And because he's a market trader, a lot of his cash in hand. I'll get bothered probably saying this. So like, I was 18-year-old before my dad even had a bank account. Like, I was 18. So when I got a job at a bank, it was very much I was working for the devil, like with my dad.
Interesting.
So my dad's like very anti-investment, anything, anti-risk. Just you hold all your money in cash, you pay your mortgage off, you keep your expenses down. That's you life sorted. So me and my dad have regular arguments because I've got a lot of debt on properties. So I've got quite a few buy-to-let properties, all leveraged up. And we've had to have a rule now where we don't talk about it because it just ends up in an argument. Because every time my dad sees me, like, you paid your mortgages off yet? I'm like, Dad, we're not going through this again. I'm never going to pay them off. Well, I just sleep at night having all this debt that you've got. I'm like, because the assets are paying it and the income's paying it all off. It's all fine. It's all taken care of. What if something goes wrong? What, with all of them? Like, I'm going to be fine. Yeah, but what if something does? Right, well, I've got my emergency pot, which will then pay it. But what after 6 months? Like, Dad, we're going around in circles here. Like, he just cannot comprehend it at all. So that was the upbringing that I was brought up with. Value a pound, like know the value of a pound.
I think I didn't know that was going to be the case, but you can always feel, right, when someone goes into money, I feel like the similar thing. Like I like to look after and try to build wealth in different ways and like reinvest in the business or whatever. And it's because like, I remember my parents arguing about money and saying exactly the same thing. Like, if you look after the pennies, they'll look after themselves, that kind of stuff. And it's just like a generational thing, maybe. Yeah. Maybe that's unfair, but it feels like it is.
Well, my dad's got a saying as well. If you spend £1 less than what you earn, you'll always have money. If you spend £1 more than what you earn, you'll always be in debt. And that's my dad's entire philosophy around debt.
Yeah.
Debt is bad, regardless of what it is. Debt is bad.
But it feels like that's what the government or society has always wanted people to feel like. So they just hold it in one place and then inflation goes up and then people make more money.
Yeah.
Really interesting. Okay. And so then I can then imagine you being like, I need to look after the money. I'm going to find other ways to do it. So how did you get into the financial sector?
Through my brother playing Sunday League football.
Wasn't expecting it.
So I left school at 16.
Yeah.
And again, so a few years before that. So I boxed as a kid. So from 11-year-old up to 21, I had 43 amateur boxing fights. Oh, wow. And my dream was to become a world champion, as it is with any young boxer. And I remember being like 12, 13-year-old and my dad saying, what do you want to do when you leave school? I'm like, I want to box. He's like, what do you really want to do? I'm like, I want to box. I'm like, I'm going to make it. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. He's like, what's your plan B? And I said to him, well, you seem to do all right. I'll just work on the markets with you. And it was the worst mistake I've ever made because it was coming up to the school 6 weeks, summer holidays. And he said, right, you're coming on the markets with me for the summer. I'm like, I want to play outside on my bike. And he said, no, you're coming on the markets with me and I'll pay you £9 a day. So my head very quickly went, £9, 6 days a week, 6 weeks, that's an Xbox. Yeah, nice, I'll come. So he got me up at 4 a.m. the first day, Monday morning. We went to the market, got home. He paid me in pound coins, my £9. As I'm walking off, he says, oh, Joe, he said, because you're working now, you need to start paying board. I went, what's board? He went, well, rent. He says, what do you think pays for the house, the lights, the mortgage, your mum washing your clothes? What pays for all that? He says, I need a third of your wage. Oof. So I gave him £3 back, begrudgingly, as I'm walking away, trunting away to myself. Oh, Joe, how did you get to the market today? I'm like, well, in your van. Right, okay. I need £2 petrol money.
Oh, he's teaching you a lesson.
So
then,
he
isn't
took
he?
another £2 off me in petrol money. So from the £9, I was left with £4. And so that was that. So I got the face on about that. Gets me up the next morning, just about to leave the house. She said, "Oh, have you got yesterday's wage?" I said, "Why?" He went, "Well, what are you going to eat all day?"
Oh, the first day he'd paid for your lunch.
Yeah.
Okay.
But no, it was breakfast and lunch because we were at the market from 5 a.m. and we were out till 5, 6 p.m.
Yeah.
So that taught me the value of money pretty quick. It also taught me that because the Castle Market, there's the second-hand market in Sheffield. They've moved it now, but it used to be called Castle Market, and there was a cafe inside. And I worked out very quickly if I went in there begging to the ladies who worked in the cafe, telling them that my dad was forcing me and not feeding me, I'd get free food.
Nice.
So I managed to sort the food out for a little bit. But I remember about a week in, and I said, "Oh, Dad, I don't want to come on the markets anymore." I said, "I don't want to be a market trader now." And he just went, "Tough, you've committed." And he dragged me there the entire 6 weeks, and I hated him for it. Like some days, literally kicking and screaming, dragging me out of the house. But it's the best thing he ever did.
Wow.
Because it made me realise that I didn't want to be a market trader.
And so at the same time, you were playing football on the Sunday?
No, so my brother. So it was my brother.
Oh, I see, okay.
So, yeah, so this was, I basically just boxed growing up that was my life. And then flash forward to leaving school, GCSEs, did all right. I was going to college in the September. Didn't want to go to college, but I'd had it drilled into me from teachers and from my parents that without A-levels and a degree, you're either going to be a bin man or you're going to work on the markets with your dad. I didn't want to be a bin man, and I certainly didn't want to work on the markets with my dad. So I went to college, and my dad had, no one in my family's ever gone to university. And my dad had these aspirations that I was going to be a barrister. He wanted me to, I was going to get a degree, I was going to be a barrister. So that was that. And then, so this was before the summer, 6-week holidays in the summer. And my mum and dad were like, "Right, so you need to go out and get a job." I'm like, "I'm going to college in September." They're like, "Yeah, but what are you going to do in the meantime and what are you going to do part-time?" So they used to kick me out of the house every morning when they went to work, and I'd put a shirt on, get my record of achievement, as we all remember, go and hide around the corner. They'd go to work. I'd go back home, sit on my Xbox all day playing that.
Nice.
As you do. And about 2 weeks in, my brother used to play Sunday League football. And my mum came back and she said, "I've got you a job interview tomorrow." I went, "Where?" She says, "Lloyd's Bank." I went, "Doing what?" She went, "I've no idea." But she leant in, and I'll never forget this day, she went, "But do not fuck it up." So I went to this interview in Sheffield City Centre, and I actually took a mate with me because I got no intention of getting this job at all.
Okay.
So I took my friend, he sat in the banking hall, I went up to the front, Julie Chant she's called, she was the service manager there. And she came to the reception desk, took one look at me, looked over my shoulder at my friend, went, "You, come here." Took me in an office, and she said, "Right, drop the attitude, drop the cocky attitude. I know you switched on. I've promised your mother a job, and I'm going to give you a job. Now get the fuck out of my office, and do not lie to her, because I'm going to ring her now and tell her I've given you the job." So I remember walking out of this banking hall, and I said to my mate, I've got a job in the bank." He went, "Doing what?" I said, "I still don't know." So when it turned out I was a cashier.
Perfect.
But I fell in love with it.
Really?
So the actual cashiering side, I hated, and I probably got every record going for every till error on the planet because I was paying zero attention to that. But what I discovered a passion for was the relationship building and speaking to people. So it's a little bit different now, but back then was when you'd go in a bank and they'd be trying to upsell you. They'd be trying to get you in front of one of the account managers to sell you a credit card, to sell you a loan, to put your money in a savings account to get a better interest rate. And it just became this game because we used to get paid £3 per sale that the account managers did for referring it on. So I very quickly worked out, hang on, I can double or treble my salary here.
By selling.
I'm here anyway.
Yeah.
I'll enjoy it more and I'll make a lot more money.
Does that resonate with what your dad does? It's similar thing.
Yeah.
Right? You've got to have a lot of talk about you and a lot of charisma.
Yeah.
To be able to upsell to people in front of you.
Yeah. Yes. My dad's a salesman, basically.
Yeah.
And so it just became an obsession. Like I remember buying this book, KISS, Keep It Simple series, Guide to Selling.
Yeah.
And it was that thick, this big, like a Bible, and it went everywhere with me. It was dog-eared, ripped to pieces, covered in highlighters, and I basically slept with this book every night. And it got to the stage where people would be queuing out of the banking hall, and they would hear me pitch 5 or 6 people in front of them, and they would wait to avoid being served by me in the queue because they knew what was coming. But it literally got to the stage where you would either sit down with one of the account managers or storm out of the banking hall in disgust. Like, there were no in between. You were not escaping my till unless one of those 2 scenarios happened.
That's so funny. What a good way of getting into it. And so then did you work up through that bank, or at what point did you go, I'm going to do this myself?
Yeah, so I did that. Then I wanted to become an account manager, but I was 16 at the time. And I won all these national awards, like won all these incentives, and they were sending us all over the country. But in finance, especially back then, every incentive was very heavily drink related.
Okay.
I was 16.
Yeah.
So I was being sent to Paris, to London, to all these swanky events, not even old enough to legally stay on my own.
No.
So they had to then pay a chaperone. Basically, I had a babysitter.
They were committed to it, though.
Yeah. So I basically had a babysitter who would then come on these events with me and just keep an eye on me.
No way.
And then I started pressing to be an account manager myself. And they were like, "You're too young." I said, "I'm not." So that was the first thing, "You're too young." So then I thought, right, sod you, I'll be more qualified than everybody else. So I took all these exams, became more qualified at 17-year-old than most of the banking staff and the sales team were ever. Then I went back to them. They're like, no, you don't understand. You're not old enough to take a loan out, so you're not old enough to sell a loan. And I'm like, well, that makes a bit of sense.
Yeah, it makes more sense.
Yeah.
Couldn't you have told me that before I'd done the exams?
But I got the job on my 18th birthday and then just worked my way through from there.
No way. So what was your relationship like with money? So that was your parents and you obviously got into the sector. What were the things that were frustrating you at that time with money? I know it's pretty young, but maybe if we look longitudinally, like from that time to maybe now, what are the things that frustrate you when you see other people mismanaging their money?
I've done it. So I was horrendous with money until my mid-20s. So when I was at the bank, I was earning very good money for someone at my age. And then when I left it, like I was 22 when I left the UK and moved to Abu Dhabi, I was earning like 70 grand a year. And we'd just bought a house, but I was spending money left, right and centre. I never had to think about it. And I remember at 18, like my lifelong goal and ambition was to one day earn 100 grand a year and pay tax on it. I then moved to Abu Dhabi at 22. And then in this world of independent financial advisors where it's commission only. So there was no basic salary. And for me at that point, it was just like the penny dropped. I'm like, right, hang on. So you're telling me if I work twice as hard as him, I get paid twice as much as him? They were like, yep. And if I work more than her, I get paid X amount more than her? They were like, yep. So again, I've always been a numbers man. So it became just a game. So I knew how many calls I had to make a booking, how many bookings I had to make to get a bum on a seat, how many bums on a seat I needed to have to get a client. I knew what my average client size was.
Turned it into a business.
Yeah. And I started earning this ridiculous amount of money very quickly at 22, 23-year-old. And I then fell down this very dangerous route of stop looking at things like money as monetary value. It was just another deal. So that expensive watch it weren't 10 grand for that watch. It was just 3 deals. That business class flight wasn't 2.5, 3 grand. It was just another deal. And because I know how many calls I needed to make to get a deal, I'm looking at that business class flight thinking, that's just an extra 30 phone calls next week and I'll make it back.
No way.
So I was spending money like water and it was all right until it wasn't. And flash forward to 2016, we changed firms and this new firm wasn't quite what we expected. Didn't get paid for 6 months. It was when the Brexit vote happened. So there was a lot of uncertainty. The pound lost a third of its value. I was paid in pounds. So life became very expensive here. And a lot of expats who were predominantly my clients are expats in the Middle East. They were leaving the region, uncertain about the jobs, like not renewing contracts. So no one was investing. At the same time, my wife and I were going through, so we couldn't conceive children naturally. So we were going through IVF. Excuse me. And we went through 5 failed rounds of IVF here in the UAE before we were blessed with my twin boys. Which is a very expensive hobby out here, like upward of £15,000 a round. And I very quickly ran out of money at that point. And at first, it was this victim mentality. Why me? Why can't we have kids? Why is this new firm shit? Why is the market shit? Why is it's so expensive to live? Why is no one buying? And it was everyone else's fault apart from mine. And it was only when I sat back and looked at this huge house we were living in that we were renting with a private pool, I got a full-time maid, full-time driver. We were flying business class everywhere. We were staying in 5-star hotel suites every weekend. And only then that I went through the very daunting experience of working out, this is how much you've earned since you moved. This is how much you've earned since you moved to Abu Dhabi. This is how much you got left. Therefore, this is what you've spent. And that, for me, it just exposed me. And it were a big wake-up call. And that's when I started really taking my own advice.
Wow, okay.
And really put a budget in place and put a plan in place and started saving and paying myself first. So that, for me, were a big pivotal moment of getting in the shit with it before I then managed to find the gift in that situation and come out the other end.
Did that coincide with the time that you had your twins? Like, was it a similar time?
It was a year before. So again, we were still scrimping and saving and struggling, and we ended up then going either another 1 or 2 times after that with the IVF before the boys were born.
Yeah. Wow. So what took you to Abu Dhabi in the first place?
So my best friend, John, who sadly passed away in February this year, I worked with him at Lloyd's, and he moved out 18 months before me. And John was 10 years older than me. He was best man at my wedding, not best man at his. And I just worshipped him. So I've always been, if I want something, I'll find someone that's got that thing I want, and I'll learn from them. And I'll learn and I'll absorb as much as I can. I've always been like that. And when I was 17, 18 year old, John was 27, 28. He drove a Porsche.
Cool.
All the women loved him. All the men half hated him, half wanted to be his best mate. It was just, he just had this aura about him, like big, not that I'm ever going to be 6'4", but big, 6'4", very confident. And I just wanted that. So I just pecked his head and begged him to teach me everything. And we then became very close. John left in 2008 to Abu Dhabi, and straight away I was like, right, I want to come work with you. And he just said, let me get settled. And when I'm settled, you can come out. And then he offered me the job 18 months later.
No way. So you're there for 10 years.
Yeah.
It's a very different lifestyle, right, in the Middle East than the UK, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's much easier to spend, I think, here. Like, money's almost fluid, unless you're really careful, which is why I think you've done so well in terms of your personal brand, your social presence, because you're talking to the pain points that a lot of people are going through, where they're spending hundreds of pounds every weekend at a brunch, and they've got drivers and maids and delivery services for food and all sorts of stuff. And maybe because, your opinion is probably better than mine on this, but like, we've been here 2.5 years. I still translate dirhams to pounds.
Yeah.
So I still think, okay, well, that's 100 dirhams. That's 22 quid. But you can quickly get lost on a night out, which being like, oh, it's fine. Just dirhams.
Oh, it's monopoly money.
Isn't it just? Yeah. Did you find that when you first moved here?
Yeah, big time.
Okay.
So like the amount of people that wouldn't bat an eyelid at spending 50 dirham a pint.
Yeah.
Yeah, you ask them for 12 quid for a pint back in London and they'd balk at you.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Exactly the same thing.
Exactly. It's so interesting, isn't it? So how did your approach or your philosophy around money change when you had the twins and when this all happened for you and it sort of all, came to an end? So
that was actually when I started creating content.
Okay, yeah.
So I've been in this industry since I was 16-year-old, really. So I knew then was the time when the boys were born. I knew then was the time to increase my life insurance. I knew then was the time to start saving for their education. So because when the boys were born, it were bittersweet. Like, we'd waited all these years. Laura's pregnant, amazing. Then went through the pregnancy. The boys were born. Like, we were over the moon, and then they both had this very rare salt wastage disease. And Jasper, in particular, one of my twin boys, nearly died. So they were 3 weeks in neonatal intensive care. We had them in Abu Dhabi, and they were born at the Abu Dhabi Corniche Hospital. We lived the opposite end of Abu Dhabi, which is like a 40-minute drive away. So we came up with this logic. Looking back now, it was the worst thing we ever could have done. But we came up with a lot, because we were at the hospital all day, every day. We came up with a logic. I know what we'll do. While the boys are in hospital, we'll move into the hotel next door to the hospital. So we'll take this already very stressful situation and we'll put ourselves in a completely different environment. Yeah. And in hindsight, it was the worst thing we could have done, because we were just crawling the walls of this hotel room for 3 weeks. But one thing someone taught me, Jackie Slater, one of my first bosses and mentors and good friends to this day, Jack's taught me when I was 17, 18-year-old, if you can't explain something to an 8-year-old, you don't really understand it yourself.
I love that saying.
And it's something that stuck with me forever. So I've always been a massive fan of just keeping things super simple. So the boys are born. I went to Dr. Google, and everything I found was either a little bit of information, put your details in for more, which, listen, I knew that meant I'd get cold called tomorrow, or it'd be a 30-page jargon-filled document full of bullshit and nonsense and noise. So I put a bit of a rant out on social media talking about how my industry is full of jargon and blah, blah, blah and all this after a couple of glasses of red wine. And it just divided the room. And sort of people within my industry sort of went for me a little bit. But anyone that weren't from my industry said, yeah, completely agree. You couldn't be further right. And then on the back of that, it was right, can you talk about this? Can you talk about that? So it really then just started putting like...
I just want to briefly interrupt this podcast so I can talk to you about Nutrition Kitchen, who have kindly sponsored this episode. As entrepreneurs who are looking to stay as healthy as possible, fueling ourselves with high quality food without breaking the bank or wasting time can be tough day to day. Nutrition Kitchen solves that issue by delivering incredible meals to your door, tailored to your diet, whether you're trying to lose weight, build muscle, or maintain balance. They change their menus all the time so you can choose from a variety of dishes and leave the monotony of meal prepping behind. Now, back to our guest.
Simple videos out there on the internet, on Facebook, on Instagram, of what people can do to get themselves in a position before they really need to employ no one like myself. Because a lot of finance is pretty simple. It's just we hide behind the curtain in the financial services industry. We overcomplicate it. We use all these big fancy words to, in my opinion, to make people like me sound more important and more intelligent than we actually are. When in reality, if you do X, Y, and Z, for most people, you can get where you need to be.
So you've ripped that down, haven't you? I saw like your website and your business family wealth. Like the cool stuff about it is it does feel like all the blogs, all the videos, there's so much information on there.
Yeah.
Like you can learn a ton of stuff. So if someone's listening to this and they're a business owner or an entrepreneur at different levels of business, what are the things that you think they should be looking at in terms of building wealth? Like what are the things that they might be doing right now which are incorrect, in your opinion, that they could change very easily and start to see more returns in terms of just the money they have?
So one of the things I talk about quite a bit is the 5 steps to financial freedom. So the first is spending less than what you earn. So which we've touched on already. It's doing a budget. It's knowing what's coming in, knowing what's going out, and paying yourself first. Second thing is family protection. So again, this is something that business owners are the worst for it as well. Like nothing will ever happen to me. I'm invincible attitude. Like no, because if you die today, it's not only you that dies, it's your income that dies for the next potentially 20, 30 years. So if you have a family, if you've got kids, if you've got a spouse, and you don't have a life insurance, like adequate life insurance in place, yet you're paying for premium TV packages, or you've got the latest iPhone, give your head a wobble. Like genuinely have a word with yourself, because you're taking the piss. And it's something that I'm very passionate about. So the second thing I say is make sure you're fully protected. And even if you're single, you don't need life insurance, because who cares what happens to your money after you die or your debts. But you do need something what's called critical illness cover or serious illness cover, because again, you are your source of income. Like I run my business. I would like to think if I took myself out of it, it would still operate itself to a certain extent, but I'm under no illusion that I am the face of it. If I disappeared tomorrow, if I went dark for 12 months, my business would take a huge hit on the back of that. So there's an insurance policy that you can take out, which in the event of that happening would pay you out a lump sum. You can then live off that. You can use that to pay for alternative treatment if you want. And a big misconception here that you get in the Middle East is people say, I'm covered, I've got health insurance. I'm like, no. Your health insurance. So that's a story. So I had a client in Saudi Arabia, Amanda she's called, and she worked for one of the big oil companies. Mid-30s, single, no dependents, and she got diagnosed with terminal cancer. She was going through chemotherapy, and I never spoke, and I feel guilty for this, I never spoke to her about life insurance. Like, we never had that conversation. So she's basically told, you're going to die, and she's having chemotherapy treatment, which is all funded for by her health insurance, as long as she remains employed by that employer.
Okay.
So she's got a decision to make. You either stay working at this company until you die to pay for your treatment, or move back to the UK, but you're not covered by the NHS because you're a non-UK resident. And she spoke to them, and the treatment would have cost her £8,000 a month. She didn't have that money.
Wow.
So
Okay.
she had to basically work chained to a desk until she died.
Really? Wow.
Now,
So what is the law on not getting covered by the NHS if you've moved away?
so you're not eligible for NHS treatment,
Really? At all?
even if you pay national insurance. It's for UK residents only.
Oh, so you have to. So if you go back there and live there again,
Yeah,
you do, of course.
yeah,
But if you went back on like, it's basically it's like health tourism, isn't it? You're not eligible.
yeah.
That's interesting. So if you go on holiday, if you're French and you go on holiday to the UK, the NHS will cover you, won't they? I think you get charged, but they'll still look after you.
Again, even if you went back, you went to the NHS, they treat you,
But they would,
but you get a bill.
interesting. At the same rate that you'd get at the US or here.
Yeah.
Really?
I don't argue, but I've known people that have never had that bill, but I've also known people, close friends, that have had that bill.
Wow. Okay. So one of the biggest things you need to look at if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to build wealth is just looking after yourself.
Yeah, looking at protecting today.
That's really interesting. What? Okay. So what else should they looking
Right,
at?
so that you say, so one, spend less than what you earn. Two,
Yeah,
protection. Three, before you even think about investing or the future, clear any unsecured debts that you've got. So make sure you're debt free. Once you're debt free, make sure you've got your emergency pot. We've already spoke, your 6 months expenses. Excuse me. And then finally is invest wisely. So look at basically investing for the future. And I know a lot of business owners are very much of the mindset of I'm going to invest everything back into my business, more ads, more
Yeah.
more audience, more targeting, more this, more that, more development. But what investing is for me, it's for business owners, it's your exit strategy. It's your plan B, which everybody needs, because no matter how good your last year was, there's no guarantee that that's going to continue moving forward. And the way I tell people to invest, before we talk about do you invest in A or B, is work out why you're investing. So put a tangible goal around it. So what is that? Is it your children's education when they're 18? Do you want to fund their university? Yes, right. We need to work out how much that's going to cost. Is it financial freedom or retirement or whatever you want to call it? But is it the day you want to step away from the business and live life on your terms, where you've got enough income from your investments, which is funding your lifestyle for you and your family? Right, it's that. Perfect. And then it's putting a real dream around that. Where are we living? What's life look like? How many holidays a year do you want? Is a holiday for you shitting in a bucket in a tent, or is it flying business class and staying in 5-star hotel suites? Right, okay, it's that. How many of them do you want a year? How many weeks at a time do you want to travel for? Do you want to treat your grandkids? Do you want to treat your children? Where do you want to go in for dinner?
Yeah.
Which golf club do you want to be a member of? Which tennis club do you want to be going to? Where do you want to be socialising at the weekends? What car do you want to drive? Does your wife want to drive a car? Do you want 2 cars between you? How often do you want to change those cars? And once we know all these things and we build that dream, it's then going, right, we put price tags on it. That's going to cost you this. That's going to cost that. Therefore, you need £10,000 a month as an income today. But you don't want to retire for 20 years. So that £10,000 today will be £20,000 in 20 years. Right, how much do you then need in a pot to generate that £20,000 per month income? Right, this amount. That's your number. So we know that's your number that you need at age 55. We then funnel that back to today. And that then tells us, today you need to do X. You need to put X amount away. Right, are we putting that amount away? Can we put that amount away? No. Right, okay, something's got to give. Either you're doing less beach clubs and you're buying less bottles of vodka with sparklers on it now, or which of them cars are we giving up? How many of them holidays a year that you said you want to go on? Are they really that important to you? Right, do we knock 4 holidays down to 3 holidays? Or do we just change something that's happening today? So for most people, it's a fact that you need to be investing more than what you actually are. But unless you go through that exercise, you'll not know that. So once we realise you need to be investing an extra £1,000, £1,500, £2,000 a month, like, right, where do we get that from? We either earn more or we spend less, or a combination of the two.
I think that's really interesting because, you know, if you speak to someone about growing a business, quite often they'll start by saying, well, how much do you want to earn? Like, do you want to do 100 grand a month or do you want to do $1 million a month? Because it's a very different model and it's a very different way of approaching stuff. And then you can work back from there. Okay, you want to do that. Okay, we need to spend this on ads, or you need to have this type of structure in the background. And it's a very similar way when you're looking at actually most things like fitness and finance, really, isn't it? Like, if you just look forward and plan where you want to get to, like I want a 6-pack, or I want $1 million in cash in the bank, or I want 10 houses, you can then, there's a clear roadmap of then how to get back from there, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, because how daunting is me saying to you, you need 10 million quid when you're 55?
Yeah.
Or me saying you need to invest £3,500 a month for the next 20 years?
Exactly.
Like, what's easier to digest?
Smaller, much easier, isn't it? Okay, so what's your take on, people who say you should just stop having that coffee every day and that would do it? What do you think about that? Because that rolls me up a little bit.
I mean, look, in the grand scheme of things, spending £3 a day on a coffee, is it going to change your life over the next 40, 50 years? Probably not. Okay. Now, what I do say with people is, it's more on the lifestyle side of things, of when people are looking at these shiny Rolexes, when people are swapping the car every 2 years and they're spending 100,000 sterling a pop on this new car. It's like, look, that's great if you've got this taken care of. And if you're 38, 35, 38, 21, 40-year-old and you don't want to retire till you're 55, I'm not saying you need that £10 million in investments today. But what I'm saying is, right, are we on track to achieve it? Are we putting away the numbers, what we said we needed to put away between now and then? If the answer is yes, buy the car.
Yeah.
Get the car. Get it out of your system. Okay? Have the expensive holidays. Live life for today, because it's about finding that balance. Because one of the biggest mistakes I see people make is overspending. One of the other mistakes I do see certain people make is underspending or oversaving. Because, and I admire that, really do. But what happens in reality is, you'll do it, you might do it for a month, for 3 months, for 6 months, but at some point you've got to snap, and at some point you've got to hit that fuck it button, and you're going to end up taking 10 steps back from where you actually are now. So it needs to be sustainable. Yes, look after your future self, but also you need to live for today.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing I think is really important, because, we've got, as a business owner, you've got that sort of luxury that, like we spoke about earlier, before we started probably, we're just problem solving all the time. Yeah. And so by not spending that £3, what you're actually saying is, I can't solve enough problems to have that. Whereas if you flip it and you turn yourself from scarcity to abundance and go, a bit like you said about making more phone calls, actually. Yeah. Like, I can afford that if I work harder, whatever work harder means to you. I'm quite interested in your approach around communication between people for wealth or for money. Because I think the relationship you have with money and your spouse is so important to how much money you're going to get in the future. So we know lots of people that, some have joint bank accounts, some have separate bank accounts. Some of them, one of the partners won't even have a clue about the money situation because it causes them too much anxiety. What is your take on how we should be communicating about money and wealth building between partnerships?
You need to have that conversation as soon as possible, to make sure that your goals are aligned. Now, listen, I know it's not great chat over a first date, but before things get serious, you need to work out what you both want from life. Whether that be buying your first property, whether that be what you want to do in the future, whether that be, see, if one of you wants to retire at 40 and move to Vietnam and live off $500 a month, but the other one wants to live in £1 million house and on £1 million house in Surrey, one of you's going to have to give. Yeah. So you need to know what your goals are. And then it's basically putting a structured plan in place. Like we said before, it's working out what the goal is and working backwards, but you need to do that together. And I'm not saying everything needs to be 50-50. If I'm earning £1 million a year and my wife's earning 50 grand a year, it's going to be unfair for us to be putting the same amount into the joint bills account and the same amount into savings and investing. Because again, at the same time, she may be taking more of a role in the family as well. She may be looking after the kids, which is my wife predominantly does. And I'm very, very grateful for her, and she's amazing. So again, but you need to have those conversations. You need to have those boundaries from the off. And back to sole account, joint account, have both. So you both have your own sole account, your account number 1, as we called it earlier, and then your account number 2, your bills account, that's joint. And if one of you works and one of you doesn't, let's say wife doesn't work, she still has account number 1, and you get paid into your account number 1. As well as you put money in the bills account, you also send your spouse, your wife, your husband, whichever it may be, call it housekeeping if you want, call it allowance. But I'm really big on both of you having your own money. Yeah. Because I've known clients that have done this in the past where Mr. or Mrs., one of them doesn't have an income, the other one does. The one who doesn't have the income has to go begging with the begging bowl out every time they want anything, from shopping to having the hair done to going to the gym to getting your £3 coffee to getting a taxi. And it's degrading.
Yeah, it becomes controlling and manipulating, doesn't it?
Yeah. And
what about
you have an argument in the morning, she comes to you an hour later saying, I need 100 quid for X.
Yeah.
And
And
it just takes that away.
So how would you deal with it if one of them doesn't want to know about the money situation? So say you've got, same as your example. So maybe the lady runs a business and she's got all the money, and the guy doesn't want to hear about the business and the money situation because they find it, because of lack of control, they find it overwhelming and too stressful. They don't want to hear about it. But then the overwhelming feeling for the person making the money is like they've got no one to speak to. So how would you overcome that sort of, or what's a solution that they could find for themselves?
You do need to have those conversations. How you have those conversations, I may not be qualified to say. That may be a marriage counsellor that you need to speak to, but you need, whatever it is, you need to have open communication. And like I said, from the off, because again, if you're both going into buying a house together and my wife, Laura, let's say she's debt free and I've got 40 grand's worth of debt, what I've never told her about, like that's got to come up on a joint mortgage application. Like she's got to find out about it. So you may as well have that conversation sooner than later. Like she needs to know if I've already got 800 quid a month going out in debt repayments and I've already defaulted on loans, on credit cards, on everything else. Like that needs to be a conversation that you have very early doors, in my opinion.
I completely agree. And I think it's one of those things which just for some people is difficult, isn't it? And it comes across like one person wants to stay at home, one person's running a business. They're probably different characters. They've probably got different lifestyles. And therefore you can see that there's a bit of an issue there, isn't there? So in terms of going back to business owners, so business owners who are listening to this podcast, how can they measure their financial stability? And I'm talking about financial stability before they start investing, because I want to go on to like, how can they invest? What's an investment plan look like to you for a business owner? But how can they understand we're financially stable? Because obviously you can look at your P&L, you can look at the cash in the bank, but at what point do they go, okay, now is time for us to start diversifying our investment portfolio? Is there a way that you would look at that?
As soon as you've got that, as soon as you've got enough, as soon as you've got your 6 months expenses, depending obviously what line of business it's in, but as soon as you've got 6 months expenses within the business and within the personal, that is when you then should start look at investing and planning for the future.
Okay, to try and get your money to do something other than just sit there.
And listen, like if you look like the stock market, for argument's sake, you can invest from as little as $1 or a pound.
Yeah.
So there's no excuse for I've not got enough to do it. Everybody has.
And then, so what kind of things would you be looking at investing for people? So obviously there's property, there's crypto, there's S&P and shares. What are the kind of things that you would lead people towards, or is it specific?
So it is specific depending on risk, but broadly speaking, look, I look at saving, speculating and investing. So saving your 6 months emergency pot, that's your money in the bank. Yes, it's going to be losing money to inflation every year. Yes, it's never going to grow, but it's instant access. It's there readily available if and when you need it. Just suck it up and keep it there. Anything over and above that 6 months expenses, that's what you should be looking at investing. So that's saving. Secondly, speculating. So for me, speculating is buying something what has no inherent value to you today. A gold bar. You buy a gold bar today, that will not earn you a penny if you own it for 1,000 years. So in order for you to eat, you need to sell that gold bar in its entirety to some other fool that paid you more money than what you paid for it. And I actually look at crypto a little bit the same way as well when it comes to cryptocurrency, because it doesn't pay you an income. So for me, investing is buying something what gives you 2 bites of the cherry. While you hold it, it pays you an income, and it's also got the ability to grow in value as well. And for me, typically there's 3 ways to do that. Property, you rent it out, that's your income, also grows in value. The other thing I like about property as well is, we spoke about this earlier, you can use the bank's money to leverage your returns with mortgages. And that for me is the quickest way to grow wealth within properties, by using those mortgages to increase your returns. Second is the stock market. Again, while you're investing in the stock market, you're holding companies there. When those companies announce their profits, they share a bit of that profit in what is a dividend. That's your income. Stock market grows over time. That's your capital growth. And third way is in bonds. So all a bond is just a loan. And I mean, again, if we take a step back with the stock market, right, people overcomplicate what the stock market actually is. In its most basic form, it's just a collection of the best companies around the world that have weathered previous storms. That is it, okay? And we are living in it now. That camera, stock market. That T-shirt you're wearing, stock market. The shoes I've got on my feet, stock market. the shampoo you use this morning, obviously not me, stock market. Like, these are all companies on the stock market. We are living in it every single day. We are spending money in it every single day. So all you're doing when you're investing into that is you're just getting a little slice of that pie. And the easiest way to do that is don't turn into a day trader overnight. Just buy funds what track the market. And I made this mistake myself. Very silly mistake by investing in a singular company before, which I can tell you a story about that in a bit. But like I said, for now, I just keep it super simple and just invest in funds what track the market. And then back to your third way, which is bonds. A bond is just a loan. So if you or I need money, we need to go to a bank to get a loan or a mortgage. Companies can do that, but they can also issue bonds where they essentially just use us, the investors, as the bank. They go, right, Mr. and Mrs. Investor, give me X amount, and in return, I'll pay you this pre-agreed interest rate over this set time frame. Then at the end of it, you get your money back.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
I literally listened to it. You know Joe Marler, the rugby player?
Yeah.
I listened to his podcast last week, and it was about an investment banker, and she was explaining what bonds are. Because I was like, I've never really known what it was, and it popped up, and I was like, he'll be funny with it, and it was quite funny. He was just explaining what it is, but it's a weird way of looking at it. Because I've heard people, you know, trading and investing in bonds, and you're kind of like, well, it's debt, isn't it? Like, it doesn't make sense that it's someone else's debt. But I get it now. It's a lot more clear. Okay, so there's something else I want to talk about, and I want to move on from. But before we move on to that element, I want to just sort of get a sort of a roundup of what, as business owners, we should be doing to make sure that our money is doing more for us. I'm sure, like most of us, you love a spreadsheet. So what kind of stuff should we be making sure we're tracking? You know, you've been through loads of value in this sort of chat, but what are the things you think we should be tracking to be like, this is where our money could be going? This will make us a better, this will give us more long-lasting wealth if we track these numbers now than not.
So the first thing you should track is, like I said, you do a budget. So track what's coming in and what's going out. And then also track how much that means you can then allocate to your future self, i.e. to invest. Then work out, like as we said before, work out what the goal is and funnel that back. And once you know that, and there's apps you can do this online, like retirement calculators, it's something we do for clients on a regular basis, what we call cash flow modeling, where we can map into this system every possible eventuality, what may happen if the market crashes, if you buy a bigger house, if you have an extra child, if you downsize the house, if you change your car every X amount of years, and we can work out what that means to the overall goal, and we can play around with that. So if you want a high level calculation of that, really need to speak to a professional who can help you with it, or there's plenty of calculators online where, again, you can track that. Then you've got your spreadsheet. Then you refer what you've got versus what the spreadsheet says, what the calculator says you should have, and you'll know whether you're on track or not.
So it's literally like what measure grows, right? What we measure grows.
Exactly.
So it's looking after everything, getting a nice big picture of what's going on, and then keeping control of it. Then coming to someone like yourself when you get to a point when you're like, I need some more help. Yeah,
and again, this is what I say to people that are overspending, don't know where the money's going. Keep a money diary. Keep a money diary for a month or two. You'll hate it. Like, you will hate every minute of it. Like, I do this every now and again with a time diary. So when I'm feeling overwhelmed and I'm too busy, yet I can't tell you where certain hours or days have gone, I keep a time diary for a week where I write down every 5 minutes everything I've done every single day. It's the most laborious, painful thing that I ever do, but I usually do it once a quarter.
And you realise you're wasting time on really odd things.
Yeah, it exposes you.
Yeah.
Like, between the hours of here and here, I did nothing.
Yeah, that's a great idea. It's a bit like, is it Gary Vee or someone says you should, like 1 week a year, you should work like there's a TV camera watching you and see what you do differently.
Yeah.
Because it would be a massive thing.
I think that's a Joe Rogan thing, actually.
Is it? Maybe it's Joe Rogan. That would make more sense, wouldn't it? Joe, I want to switch it up a bit because I think something that people will need to understand from what you've done is that you've almost become or shown an example of becoming a perfect creatorpreneur. So you're already an entrepreneur, you've got the business, you've got the experience, but for the last number of years, you've been prolific with high quality content, which has really blown the brand up in terms of just awareness, right? So I'm sure it's had amazing results on the back end as well, but in terms of people knowing who you are, especially in the Middle East, for your target market, been everywhere. And I want to dive into this because you brought Ed with you today. I don't know if he's been with you for the whole time, but the stuff that's going out, I think, is really interesting. So what I'm interested in, where did you start to think I should be putting out content for a start? And then when did you think, this is how I'm going to turn that creative into something that's more standoffish or helping me stand out?
So I built my business on the back of essentially cold calling, which is we all hate receiving cold calls, we all hate giving cold calls, but that was the training that got passed down in my industry. Like, the more calls you do a day, the more bums you get on seats, the more bums you get on seats, the more you sell. And it was when Laura, my wife, was heavily pregnant, I was just miserable. I was flying to Saudi Arabia 4 days a week. I was cold calling umpteen hours every single day. I was doing 60, 70 hour weeks. Laura's heavily pregnant. I was away from home. I was overweight as well. I was living off KFCs, full fat lattes and room service 5 days a week, then coming home at Abu Dhabi at the weekends and having a massive blowout because I'd not seen anybody. And I just got to see, I'm like, look, something's got to change. Then we had the boys. Then I had a bit of a rant online, got a mixed response from it, got a lot of hate, but got a lot of love off it as well. So I thought there might be something in this. So I then started creating the content, started making the videos. And when I started doing it, I got a lot of hate from my industry.
Really?
Yeah.
Doing something differently?
No one had ever done it.
Yeah.
Like, there'd never been any financial advisor that put himself out online and made videos. So I got all sorts from so-called friends as well. And like, who does he think he is? Why does he think he's better than us? He's embarrassing himself. He's embarrassing the industry. There'd be WhatsApp flying around with screenshots of my videos, basically taking the piss out of me. And at the time, it really upset me. And a mentor of mine, I think he's been on the show actually, Spencer Lodge.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so Spen. So I've known Spen years. And Spencer said to me, and he said it probably 1,000 times, like, he said, look, your opinion of me is none of my business. Mm. And when that really sank in, that's when my content leveled up and I started creating the skits and the funny videos and poking fun at myself and the industry. And it's crazy, isn't it, right? Because I wasn't creating the content I wanted to create for fear of being judged by the only people who would never buy from me, other financial advisors.
Exactly.
And when I say it out loud, it's insane. But when I got my head around that, that's when things really started picking up. And don't get me wrong, when I first started creating them, they were horrendous. They were bad. But I put my 10,000 hours in, I stuck at it, and over time they improved.
I love that. We were literally talking today. I found some pictures of when we first started this podcast, and it's me and this guy who's like a mindset coach, but somehow he was like, I'll come to your apartment in JVC, and we'll do it. I've got these two like $30 lapel mics. We're around this table, like sat at the end. My phone's filming it, just like propped up from some books, and like it's just like a proper script. I'm literally asking questions, like the same questions. What do you think about this? What do you think about this? And you look at it, and you're like, you've just got to be happy with failing in public, I think. Like, you can't fail behind the scenes and never show anyone because you can't learn like that. Yeah. So it's really interesting to me that you were like, I'm just going to keep going, because there's so much of you that must have been like, oh, I'm going to stop.
And it makes you level up as well.
Yes.
Like, it really makes you level up. Like, I used to, like, silly little things, looking back, it's horrendous. Like, I'd start every video, Joe here from Family Wealth 101. I'm like, well, they know that knobhead, they're on your page. And then I'd talk about what the video is about. I'd have the hook of the video, then I'd have a 20-second intro. This was on an Instagram short.
Nice.
Like, again, knowing what I know now, that people just switched off the second that stupid music and that logo came up. Yeah. So,
but back then, maybe not. What I think is really interesting, you just touched on it there, is like, I'm doing a talk tonight to 150 entrepreneurs and investors about like storytelling and a bit about like basically the power of storytelling. And obviously you're nervous for anything you do like that. There's a lot of people, right? Yeah. If you don't do it, I do it like once a month or whatever, massive maximum. But I love the pressure of like, you've got to nail it. So what can you do to make it different, to make people stand out? Like, if you're talking about like pattern interrupts, how can you pattern interrupt whilst you're doing that? Anything to make it a bit different. But like you touched on there, the speed and the acceleration of learning and growth when you're under pressure, because people could take the piss out of you, is so much better. I think actually a lot of people thrive in that. Yeah. And I think a lot of the time, if you catch yourself doing that sort of 5-minute or 15-minute journal of your time, and you're like, okay, that week was quite bad, but was there any pressure? No. Yeah. Same as the gym or sport, isn't it? If there's no pressure, there's no goal, you end up going, I'm just not go as heavy today. I can't be asked.
I'm exactly the same like with my fitness. So like, I did flashback to 2019, I was 120 kilo, like real bad shape, like morbidly obese, out of breath climbing the stairs, in such a state. Got into fitness, I had my first online coach, lost almost 40 kilo in 12 months.
Wow.
And it was just life-changing. And that then became part of my life. Then I started getting a bit bored with it, didn't really have a fixed goal in mind. And then my now coach came up with the idea of doing a fitness-style photo shoot.
Ah, cool.
So just in a pair of tiny shorts, in a gym, fake tan on,
Yeah.
And it terrified me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do you know what? I'm going to do it. So last year we did a 5-month prep to like a proper bodybuilding style prep for this shoot. And I was absolutely peeled inside out. I looked in insane shape. And then sort of since then, I mean, I'm still in half decent shape and I still train on a regular basis, but I've found like I've come off the bandwagon a little bit by not having a fixed goal in mind, to the point where I had a call with Nath last week, who does my programming, and I'm going to do another shoot next summer as well. And my wife did a photo shoot this summer with her coach, and again looked absolutely amazing. She's 38, like been in the 39, sorry, in the shape of her life, like looks insane. And so we're doing it next summer. We're going to do a couple shoot next June time. And again, it's more, yes, I enjoy doing it. Yes, I love the process of it, but it's more the mindset things as well and having that fixed goal.
Yeah, for sure. Something to work towards.
Yeah.
Which is basically what we've spoken about this whole way, this conversation, right? Like having a goal and working back from it. Because if you know you're doing it next summer together, well, even now you can be like, well, at Christmas, let's not have as big a blowout as we might usually do. So just taking it back to the content side of things, what did you learn? Maybe in the last couple of years, obviously content's changing so quickly. What have you learned in the last couple of years that you think has helped you to go from, here to here?
So storytelling's a big one. And big thing for me, I try and inject as much humor and comedy into my videos as possible.
Yeah.
So if you're boring, no one's going to pay attention. So, I mean, on my videos, I've done a fake OnlyFans video.
No way.
Oh, yeah, I've been naked multiple times. I've taken a hostage. I've been hogtied. I've been chased around a church with a gun.
So is it your ideas or someone else's?
Yeah, I come up with a lot of the stuff. Yeah,
no way.
Pretend to murder my wife. So I did. I know that one split the room a little bit and actually got me banned off Instagram for 24 hours.
No way.
Yeah, made a joke video how to not lose half of everything in a divorce.
Oh, I've seen it.
Yeah, then like a skit on how to murder your wife and get away with it, bury the body. But again, I try and have fun with it. Because again, I'm a strong believer of if you are laughing, if you're smiling, if you're enjoying the content you're creating, one, you're going to retain more information. And secondly, selfishly, you're going to remember me.
Yeah.
So because it sets me apart from everybody else.
Exactly. And I guess what also stands you apart is that I'm sure there are other financial advisors or financial sectors that are doing the same thing now, but you've done the 10,000 hours of content or getting towards it or whatever you might say. And the point there is that you're so much further advanced than them. They're going to be behind you. And all this era of funnel hackers and people just copying. The problem with that is you're always behind, right?
Yeah. And the other thing as well, look, loads have tried, again, like the people that were giving me stick about it 6 years ago, like they're now the people that are messaging me, wanting to know how much business I get from it, what income it generates me and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And I'll always help people with it. And Ryan, one of the lads who works for me, he gets quite defensive. He's like, why are you helping them? Like, these were the ones that were slagging you off. And I says, look, a couple of reasons. One is they'll not stick it.
Yeah.
They'll do it for a month and they'll fall off the bandwagon. Like,
consistency.
Yeah. And that's the big thing. Like, I am consistent. I turn up every single day. I have content going out, multiple bits of content going out every single day. And I've done that for the past 5 years, like every day without fail.
I think consistency over anything is insane.
Yeah. And another thing as well is that not everything's finance. No. Like, I'm very open about my life through like vulnerabilities that, like some of the shit that I've been through, I'm very open about. I talk openly about the mistakes I've made with money, which seems to resonate with a lot of people because they know I'm not immortal.
Yeah.
I talk about golf. I talk about fitness. I talk about family. I talk about like self-development. So I talk about things like food. I'm obsessed with like really good food. Love nice restaurants. So I talk about this sort of stuff. And I think that resonates with a lot of people as well. Because when I talk about family, it resonates with family men. When I talk about golf, or us golfers are better than everybody else on the planet, by the way.
Sure.
So, and if there's one thing that golfers don't love more than playing golf, it's talking about golf.
Exactly.
So again, things like that. So, and I don't do that intentionally. I just talk about, these are passions of mine.
But it makes so much sense. And like Gary Vee said, it just literally document it. If you just document what you like, it will attract people that you want to work with.
Yeah.
If you go out there and start to be like a bit of an introvert and talking about the nerdy finance stuff, you're going to attract people who are exactly like that. You want the people that are like you to work with.
And it also disqualifies those that don't.
Yes.
Because again, like, look, I am just unapologetically me. I swear. I talk with an accent. When I get excited, I talk at 100 miles an hour. I get very giddy. I'm borderline ADHD and confident, which some people might see as arrogance, but I'm fine with that because not everyone's going to like me. And again, like for me, I'm absolutely fine with that because what that does, it builds my tribe of people that do enjoy my content and that I would get on with, but it disqualifies them that don't.
Yeah.
If you don't like me on my videos, you're certainly not going to enjoy working with me.
Exactly, because it's authentically you.
Yeah, so it just saves you time and me.
Yeah. Talk to me about your visual hooks, because I think this is where you're really good as well.
Okay.
So one of the ones I saw this morning, you got your kids to divide up some sweets. And I can't remember what they were talking about actually, which is my bad.
Inflation or saving?
I think
or
I think it might have been saving. Yeah. Anyway, so you explain what's going to happen, and then you were like, turn your phone. But it was in like the first 3 seconds, and it zoomed out, changed, and you had to move your phone. And I was like, how? I've just done something. You made me physically do something. I was like, that is so clever. And then I was like, okay, that's the visual hook. And I started to look at the other ones. They've all got it. There's always something in the first 3 to 5 seconds that it's not just like you're shouting at someone. You're not using that kind of like just audio hook. You're very good at moving something, or you'll run, or something will happen which makes you more engaged. How did you learn that? Where did that come from?
Again, just trial and error. And I consume a lot of content. So if you want to call it, steal ideas, which I probably do, from so many different industries. Like I take a load from the fitness world. Yeah. I watch videos without the sound on. Because I'll watch a video and I'm like, oh, I like how he's done that. I like the movement he's made. I like the props that he's used. I like the camera angles that he's used. I saw one the other day where the guy laid on a table and the camera's up there. So that's something that we've been experimenting this week, of me literally laid on a table. I had Ed stood over me, recording the videos. And it's just trying different things and trial and error. And I mean, I've got a double wardrobe at home full of props.
No
that
way.
I've bought over the years and kept and we keep using. I've got fake money. I've got a piggy bank. I've got a ball gag. I've got an
I saw
axe.
the fake money when you started burning it, and I was like, oh God, someone's going to get upset that you called it out straight away. Like, before you said anything, it's fake money.
But I've got also like wigs, masks, like scarves, all sorts of stuff that just props that I use.
It's so good.
That I bring into the videos. And it's not even got to be related to the video a lot of the time. So like we recorded one the other day where I got an apple. And I was literally about to eat this apple and he just start talking. So we were talking with this apple, then I just threw it over my shoulder.
You can't stop looking at what's in your hand, can you?
But then the next scene was, so we cut it, a 30-second clip over 4 different scenes. Then the second scene, I caught the apple, continue talking. Then I threw the apple hard to the side. Then the third scene, I'm bouncing back as if it's hit me in the stomach and then take a bite of it at the end. So it's just sort of like those pattern interrupts, and that is a lot more interesting than me sat here with my arms folded talking to you about the benefits of saving money.
Yeah. Well, this is what I think is really interesting with the whole side of this, because you've taken what is effectively quite a boring subject, but boring businesses are good. So the boring subject, but you've turned it into something fun, which then means people can't ignore it. And then once they start listening, they're like, oh, I really should be doing this actually. Yeah. I really should be saving or monitoring all this stuff. I think it's really, really interesting the way you've done it.
Yeah. Cool.
It's been a really interesting conversation, Joe. We've covered a lot of topics. What do you think would be your piece of advice to an entrepreneur listening to this who's not quite got the confidence to put out content, start making those videos and start benefiting their business from showing their face or their personality? So
again, what someone taught me, your opinion of me is none of my business. And secondly, look, nobody's going to notice anyway. Nobody cares.
I love that, because did you hear the Hormozy quote where he was like, I've spent $10 million advertising my new book. I've got 500,000 people coming to a webinar. And the week before that webinar launched, this is the last one, Leeds, I think last summer, he asked everyone he met, are you coming to the webinar? He said 90% of people didn't know he had a book coming out. And he was like, I could not have done more to promote this book, and people still didn't know.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like to start with, if you're just starting out, you're not going to have a following anyway, so no one's even going to see it.
Yeah.
So be bad in front of your mom, in front of your aunties, in front of your cousins, in front of your mates, okay? And then use them as a litmus test, and then just keep improving and keep getting better.
Perfect. Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. If you like these episodes, feel free to subscribe to our Healthy Hustle newsletter below, where you'll get behind the scenes information from our guests, as well as from the studio operator who helps us create these cinematic episodes. It's also full of business advice and tips, and it will help you join the community of healthy entrepreneurs.